Veganism is taking off in a big way. That's not my opinion, that's fact. More people than ever are becoming vegan. Take the UK for example. There are now 350% more vegans compared to a decade ago. This is reflected in the growing industries in most sectors. Just take the food industry, where plant-based food sales are up 1,500%. Rarely does a day go by without new vegan options coming out. For example, supermarket giant Sainsbury's recently released a new line of vegan cheese, which exceeded expected sales by 300%. Elsewhere, for example in Australia, Germany, Russia and the US, similar trends have emerged. The campaign Veganuary has broken growth records too, as have the number of people searching for vegan on Google. But there's been a twist, because as people are adopting veganism more and more, there's been a lot of pushback from industry. Corporate leaders clearly feeling threatened, are pressuring lawmakers to nip this trend in the bud. In the US, many states have passed what are known as Ag-gag bills. These laws make it a felony to do something as seemingly trivial as take a photograph of a pig on a factory farm. And why? Because it's a threat to profits. And what's worse is it's happening in Australia too. Their new biosecurity bill, dubbed the Australian Ag-gag legislation, hands power to law enforcement officials, allowing them to prosecute whistleblowers revealing the practices of animal rights abusers.
You were then taken to a Union-controlled satellite link.
I broadcast my revelation to the 12 states and 4 off-world colonies. 18 minutes later, the enforcers attacked.
Let's play a round of Spot the Criminal.
Is it A, this guy, B, one of these people, or C, these people?
If you guessed C, you're a caring person with a heart brimming with compassion, and you're legally wrong. Because in the real world, you free willy, you go to jail. The legal line is moving further and further in favor of criminalizing activism. The Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act, or AETA, was signed into law on November 27, 2006 by President George W. Bush. This act amended and expanded the Animal Enterprise Protection Act of 1992. The Defending Dissent Foundation puts it this way: the Animal Enterprise Terrorism Act criminalizes a broad range of organizing and protest activity and brands it as terrorism. The law is intended to muzzle animal rights advocates, but it's so broad that it could be used against virtually anyone who uses the internet to research or provide information about an issue, or who organizes a protest or boycott. Yes, it is that bad. That's why we call it the Activism Equals Terrorism Act. This is particularly true when considering that the AETA leaves room for conspiracy charges, which allows for prosecution based not on your actions alone, but on your connection to other people's actions, regardless of your participation or even knowledge of those actions. The past decade has seen a number of prosecutions under both the AEPA and the AETA. These prosecutions have been notable in that they have both criminalized activities that are generally protected under the First Amendment, such as chanting and leafleting.
Canada was the first country to ban me. That happened in 1999 because on April 30th, would have been Easter Sunday, 1997, I went to Blenheim, Ontario, to the Eberts mink concentration camp, and I opened up the cages for 1,542 mink, gave them a chance to be free. In case people aren't aware, mink are killed in 2 ways on this planet, but one basic way is a manual neck breaking, take them out of the cage and snap their neck, and the other method is a mass gassing. So I gave these animals a chance to be free. Holes were cut on the perimeter fence, small dirt road, and then across that dirt road, 600 acres of forest. Things went pretty good for the mink that night. Did not go well for me. I was apprehended. I was arrested. So Canada banned me. Now, I disagree, of course, with being arrested, with being sentenced to maximum security detention center for 6 months. I did 77 days, then they deported me and threw me out of the country, made me persona non grata. Now, again, I disagree with what Canada did, because here's what doesn't make sense. If I went to Canada from Michigan, where I live, and I broke the necks of mink, I'd be welcomed. I'd be a fucking hero. But I went there and I tried to stop the killing, and I was labeled an international terrorist. Understand, not just a terrorist, because I'm from Michigan, that's Canada. I'm now international terrorist. But that's how messed up this world is, man. Look at all the people throughout history that everybody admires collectively. From Nelson Mandela and Rosa Parks and Dr. King and Gandhi, all sentenced to prison, all radical lawbreakers. When you try to bring peace and justice to the oppressed, you are labeled a terrorist, you are imprisoned, or you're assassinated. Quite a world we live in.
There is a natural order to this world, and those who try to upend it do not fare well. This movement will never survive. If you join them, you and your entire family will be shunned. At best, you'll exist as pariah, to be spat on and beaten. At worst, lynched or crucified. For what? No matter what you do, it will never amount to anything more than a single drop in a limitless ocean. What is an ocean but a multitude of drops?
Now, what if you don't steal anything, free any animals, or destroy any property? What if all you want to do is show what's happening behind the closed doors of farms, factories, and labs? In many places in the United States, this is or is becoming a crime as well. Ag-gag laws are becoming standard across the country. Ag-gag is a term used for a variety of anti-whistleblower laws in the United States that prohibit the making of undercover videos, photographs, and sound recordings. Kansas was the first state to enact an Ag-gag law in 1990. Undercover videos are important for a number of reasons. They educate the public on what's really happening to produce our food, fashion, cosmetics, etc. They also give a voice to the animals who suffer and die behind closed doors without a chance for anyone to tell their story. They help keep companies accountable for their actions, and believe it or not, they help human society. You see, ag-gag bills are troubling not only for animal activists, but also people concerned with food safety, labor issues, free speech, and freedom of the press. These bills apply equally to journalists, employees, and activists. By prohibiting any type of undercover recording, a farm's own employees would be prohibited from attempting to record food safety violations, labor violations, sexual harassment incidents, or other illegal activity. Let's do a quick summary, and if you're sensitive to graphic imagery, just listen to the audio on this, and I'll tell you when it's okay to look again. So the law protects the mink farmer using anal electrocution and skinning animals alive. It protects the vivisectionist performing cruel and useless experiments on conscious animals. It protects the farmer cramming a veal calf into a crate, lopping off appendages without anesthetics, and blatantly abusing animals. But what the law does not protect, and in fact prosecutes, is the people trying to stop all of this. How logical is this? Criminal, legally protected. Terrorist, legally protected. Illegal, legal.
This is what the general wanted me to see.
The mortal coil has become a noose.
They believe they are going to exaltation, but they are not, are they? Remove your collar.
The genomics industry demands a huge quantity of biomatter for womb tanks, but more importantly to sustain the engineered labor force. Recycled fabricants are a cheap source of protein.
Soap. They feed us to ourselves.
This attempt to stifle dissent, along with the vast livestock subsidies designed to keep meat, dairy and eggs cheap for consumers, shows just how entrenched animal agricultural industries are. The US dairy industry, for example, is currently pleading with Congress to pressure the FDA to issue a ruling that plant-based milk can't be called milk. And let me tell you this much, the dairy industry is going through a tough time at the moment. In the UK, 1 in 10 dairy farms have closed in the last 3 years. In the US, consumption levels are down, which led to a scandal recently where the dairy industry in the US actually killed 500,000 cows in order to inflate dairy prices. If you think about it, that is shocking. That is the ultimate commodification without caring. They actually killed 500,000 cows just to slightly push up the price of milk. So this corruption is being revealed and is being prosecuted. The US dairy industry this month were fined $52 million for this scandal, and this is all happening while the dairy-free market, the soy milks, the almond milks, vegan cheeses, well, this market is growing rapidly. For example, a new study came out this year that predicted that the dairy-free market is due to be worth $35 billion globally by the year 2024. And as a result, dairy companies are moving in to the plant-based industry. However, a lot of the dairy industry are worried. BBC's latest clean eating documentary is another case in point. The programme, by many accounts, provided a biased representation of the power of plant-based nutrition under the guise of educating the public about popular diets. It may be no surprise that it later transpired that the presenter's funding source was from Helmholtz Alliance, which is connected with Sanofi Aventis Pharmaceuticals, the 5th largest drug company in the world. Sanofi is the maker of some of the most popular diabetes drugs on the market, Lantus and the newly released Tadjur. They also produce a host of drugs that treat cardiovascular disease. Both diseases, incidentally, can be treated and even reversed with a plant-based diet. The conflicts of interest are not always that easy to see, but they certainly exist. As Nelson Campbell, the founder of Plant Pure Nation last week said, the power of industry is enormous, their collusion of academia, media and government runs deep. The harm caused as a result of this industry influence cannot be overstated. Animal agriculture is the leading cause of climate change, species extinction, Amazon destruction, ocean dead zones, antibiotic resistance, and the inefficient feeding of a growing population. So why is there not more awareness of the detrimental effects? Especially considering that meat, dairy and eggs are completely unnecessary for optimal health and are among the largest contributors to chronic disease. Put simply, there is a network of industries and institutions that coexist, embedding themselves in a society, and they have a vested interest in holding back veganism. They mutually benefit each other, habituating into us food habits that cause great harm. Unless we question the false bedrock assumption about the role of animal products, for example, that we need meat, dairy and eggs for protein, and rid ourselves of our archaic status quo attitudes, that, for example, things will never change, animal exploitation will be perpetuated, and the health of our planet and its people undermined. But there is hope. The animal agriculture industry and the mainstream media no longer control the messages. Due to the internet, new communication pathways are now available. We have an amazing opportunity to change the world.
If I had remained invisible, the truth would stay hidden. I couldn't allow that.
And what if no one believes this truth?
Someone already does.
Let's not be confused by the establishment agenda that far too easily diverts, nor demoralised when their power feels too strong. Stand up, speak up, and I promise you'll be on the right side of history.
Our global rainforests are essentially the planet's lungs. They breathe in CO2 and exhale oxygen. An acre of rainforest is cleared every second, and the leading cause is to graze animals and grow their feed crops. That is essentially an entire football field cleared every single second. And it is estimated that every day, close to 100 plant, animal, and insect species are lost due to rainforest destruction. I found out that 1 quarter-pound hamburger requires over 660 gallons of water to produce. Here I've been taking these short showers trying to save water, and to find out just eating 1 hamburger is the equivalent of showering 2 entire months. So much attention is given to lowering our home water use, yet domestic water use is only 5% of what is consumed in the US versus 55% for animal agriculture. That's because it takes upwards of 2,500 gallons of water to produce 1 pound of beef. I went on the government's Department of Water Resources Save Our Water campaign, where it outlines behavior changes to help conserve our water, like using low-flow shower heads, efficient toilets, water-saving appliances, and fix leaky faucets and sprinkler heads, but nothing about animal agriculture. When I added up all the government's recommendations, I was saving 47 gallons a day, but still, that's not even close to the 660 gallons of water for just 1 burger. I wanted to see if I could somehow talk with the government about this. Just calling to see if we could schedule an interview.
So my calculations are that without using any gas or oil or fuel ever again from this day forward, that we would still exceed our maximum carbon equivalent greenhouse gas emissions, the 565 gigatons, by the year 2030, without the electricity sector even, or energy sector even factored in the equation, all simply by raising and eating livestock.
If you reduce the amount of methane emissions, the level in the atmosphere goes down fairly quickly, within decades, as opposed to CO2. If you reduce the emissions to the atmosphere, you don't really see a signal in the atmosphere for 100 years or so.
Single largest contributor to every known environmental ill known to humankind. Deforestation, land use, water scarcity, the destabilization of communities, world hunger. The list doesn't stop. It's an environmental disaster that's being ignored by the very people who should be championing.
Free-living animals made up, 10,000 years ago, made up 99% of the biomass. And human beings, we only made up 1% of the biomass. Today, only 10,000 years later, which is really just a fraction of time, we human beings and the animals that we own as property make up 98% of the biomass, and wild free-living animals make up only 2%. We've basically completely stolen the world, the earth, from free-living animals to use for ourselves and our cows and pigs and chickens and factory farmed fish, and the oceans have been even more devastated.
Concerned researchers of the loss of species agree that the primary cause of loss of species on our earth that we're witnessing is due to overgrazing and habitat loss from livestock production on land, and by overfishing, which I call fishing, in our oceans.
And we're in the middle of the largest mass extinction of species in 65 million years. The rainforest is being cut down at the rate of an acre per second. And the driving force behind all of this is animal agriculture, cutting down the forest to graze animals and to grow soybeans, genetically engineered soybeans to feed to the cows and pigs and chickens and factory farmed fish.
91% of the loss of rainforest in the Amazon area thus far to date, 91% that's been destroyed is due to raising livestock.
Some people would say the problem isn't really animal agriculture, but actually human overpopulation. In 1812, there were 1 billion people on the planet. In 1912, there were 1.5 billion. Then, just 100 years later, our population exploded to 7 billion humans. This number is rightly given a great deal of attention, but an even more important figure when determining world population is the world's 70 billion farm animals humans raise. The human population drinks 5.2 billion gallons of water every day and eats 21 billion pounds of food. But just the world's 1.5 billion cows alone drink 45 billion gallons of water every day and eat 135 billion pounds of food. This isn't so much a human population issue, it's a human eating animals population issue. Environmental organizations not addressing this is like health organizations trying to stop lung cancer without addressing cigarette smoking. But instead of secondhand smoking, it's secondhand eating, which affects the entire planet. It turns out the cattle industry is having the same effect on wildlife in the United States.
The government has been rounding up horses en masse, and we now have more wild horses and burros in government holding facility, 50,000 wild horses and burros in government holding facilities than we have free on the range. Basically, you have ranchers who get to graze on our public lands for a fraction of the going rate. So they're getting like this huge tax subsidy. It's about 1/15 of the going rate. And what the Bureau of Land Management has to do is say how much forage and water is on the land, and then they divvy it up. They give so much to the cows, so much to, wildlife, and so much to the wild horses and burros. And what we see is the lion's share of the forage and water is going to the livestock industry. And then they scapegoat the horses and burros and say, oh, there are too many horses and burros, let's remove them. I always tell people that wild horses and burros are just one of the victims of the management of our public lands for livestock, because we also see the predator killing going on. We know wolves are now being targeted by ranchers to get rid of wolves. USDA has aircraft, and all they do is aerial gunning of predators. So all a rancher does is call up and say, I've got a coyote here. They'll come over and they'll shoot the coyote, or they'll shoot the mountain lion, or they'll shoot the bobcat. And this is all for ranching.
And so to know thyself is only possible through the eyes of the other. The nature of our immortal lives is in the consequences of our words and deeds that go on apportioning themselves throughout all time. Our lives are not our own. From womb to tomb, we are bound to others, past and present. And by each crime and every kindness, we birth our future.
My name is Cullen Smith. This is Lifting the Veil. You can find all of my full books, presentations, videos, films, articles, posts at subscribestar.com/liftingtheveil. Patreon has suspended this work and my account and income stream for this content. So if you are a supporting patron, then please, I ask you to move your support over to subscribestar.com/liftingtheveil. And I have just established a completely free, uncensored, totally free speech social media platform that replaces Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, every other platform all in one on liftingtheveil.locals.com. You can download the Locals app and you can join our group and have totally free speech and totally uncensored, unrestricted content access. And there is also a ton of exclusive content, and I will leave the cited reference links in the description down below. So you can check that out for all of my full content, and I will see you guys in the next video. I rely solely on word of mouth, and the recommended algorithms are not recommending any of my videos or films anymore. My channel has literally been completely restricted, so I rely on your help by sharing my work around if you appreciate it, and leave me your comments. I definitely want to know what you have to share and what you have to think about all of this stuff, and I will see you in the next video.